In October 2023, I took the plunge and I purchased property in San Francisco. Now, I moved to the Bay Area about 20 years ago, in fact, exactly 20 years ago, for work, and I have lived here off and on for the past 2 decades with some significant breaks in between. But in my mid 40s, I decided it was time to commit to a place to live, and I made the commitment of buying real estate in San Francisco. It was one of the biggest financial mistakes of my life. Why do I think that? Stay with me. I'm filming at a bit of a different angle. You always see me in my office in the same angle. This is a different angle, and this is part of my condo in San Francisco. It's always been a dream of mine to live in San Francisco, and I live in one of the most beautiful and fashionable neighborhoods in San Francisco. So I was quite fortunate to be able to purchase the condo in the neighborhood where I found my condo. I was very reluctant to buy property, but honestly, I did it not because it made financial sense, but because it was part of the American dream. And many people fall into that habit of following the pathway of the American dream that says that you must own a home. I had a whole cheering section behind me. Everyone thought it was a great idea. My parents, my friends, my families, my mentors, everyone, irrespective of what the number said, said that you must own a home. And it had been drilled in me from a very young age that I needed to own a home. It was one of the markers of adulthood. I don't necessarily regret that. I knew that I was taking a chance in purchasing a condo, but it really is programmed into us, especially the Gen X millennials, that home ownership is part of the American dream. And I thought if I didn't take the plunge to purchase a home, I was missing out on my share of the American dream. So it's not easy to buy real estate in San Francisco. Getting approved by a bank for an amount that you can actually purchase a condo took some doing, and I was approved. Had a real estate agent, went out. This condo was probably the 12th place that I saw. And places were beautiful in San Francisco, but wrong for various reasons. Wrong neighborhood, price too high, the building was dodgy, didn't have parking. That was a huge thing. There were various reasons why condos I saw were not really suited to what I needed. But when I walked into this condo, I knew this was the right condo for me. And what I find really odd about real estate is one of the biggest purchases we all make in our lives. You spend maybe, if you're lucky, 30 minutes in a house or in a condo before you say yes. And I didn't really spend that much time in this building before I said yes. I think I spent maybe 15 minutes in this condo. And what sold me was the views and the huge windows, the floor to ceiling windows. That's what I was obsessed with when I walked in. I didn't really pay attention to everything else. But of course, when you actually move into the building and you start paying attention to what's going on around you and the building surrounding you, you start noticing things that maybe you should have paid attention to initially when you went on your initial tour of the building. In some ways, I don't regret moving in here. I've lived here for almost 2 years. Of course, I've had those moments of panic when I get my mortgage statement and I see how much I'm paying in interest versus how much I'm paying in principal and what the payoff of this all is. I love the neighborhood. I love my neighbors. I love this building. But personally, I don't think buying a home was the right decision for me. And I wanted to go over why I, as a financial advisor, do not believe that buying was the right decision for me. First of all, whenever I'm advising my clients or wherever I'm thinking of my own financial decisions, it's not just a raw mathematical calculation because life is not just a raw mathematical calculation. If I had honestly run the numbers on this condo, it probably would not have made sense to make the purchase, to be perfectly honest. And I knew that to some extent going in. Sometimes you pay out of pocket for experiences or to have that piece of the American dream. And I was willing to pay out of pocket to have that experience and to have that piece of the American dream. So I knew very well likely on the condo, I would break even. Maybe I would come out a little bit ahead, but It wasn't the best financial decision I could ever make in my entire life. No condo that I bought in San Francisco or in the Bay Area would be the best financial decision in my life, simply because of the overall expense of buying in the Bay Area. And I know myself, I have itchy feet. I don't like living places for long periods of time. So I'm not going to hold on to a property for 10, 15, 20 years to really reap the appreciation. I'm probably ready to move on by year 5, and in that instance, the equation of does it make sense to buy real estate is often no, it doesn't make sense to buy real estate. But once again, I was determined to prove everyone right, get my piece of the American dream, and buy a property, and so I did. I'm almost 2 years in, and the exact things that I thought were gonna be a problem with me are the problem with this condo. First things first, the true cost of ownership of the condo. The condo is expensive. And then you have property tax. I probably pay over $10,000 a year to the city of San Francisco property tax. Insurance is staggeringly expensive. Earthquake insurance is staggeringly expensive. Maintenance, the first year I had this condo, it seemed like everything was determined to break down twice. I probably spent just over $12,000 fixing stuff in the condo, and the condo was in great condition, but the condo really hadn't been lived in. It was a second home for someone, and so they had been here every other weekend or every few months. They really weren't living here full time. And when someone doesn't live in a home full time, no one is turning the lights on and off. No one's flushing the toilet. No one is using the washer dryer. And so when someone moves in and start doing all those things, some of these things quickly start breaking down simply because they haven't really been used in the past decade because it was someone's vacation home or it was someone's second home. So that was something I really didn't take into consideration was the true cost of ownership and the cost of just repairing things. And one thing I realized very quickly, and I knew this about myself in moving in this condo, I don't want to fix stuff. I don't want to be bothered with it. I don't want the hassle of it. I want to call someone in and just have them fix it. And when you're a homeowner, you don't always have the luxury of doing that. I had a wobbly toilet seat for months because I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't want to call someone in to fix this toilet seat. I finally looked up a YouTube video on how to fix it and repaired it myself. But if I were living in an apartment, I would just call the landlord and have them come and send someone up to fix it. Yesterday was a 3-day weekend. It was a holiday here in the US, and I spent part of the day at Home Depot getting something so I can fix something else, and then I spent part of the afternoon fixing the thing. I didn't wanna do any of that, right? I wanted to be out and about living my life and exploring, but I was here, like, taking care of the condo, and what I realized about myself with things like home maintenance, I'm a very lazy woman, and I just don't wanna do it. And if you have that attitude, owning a home probably is not the best decision for you. If you don't wanna fix stuff, don't buy a home. You can't always fix stuff or have someone come in to fix stuff, even though I have had people come in to help me fix stuff that's broken. I wish I would have thought a little bit more about that I would be spending one of the few precious 3-day weekends at Home Depot, and I hate going to Home Depot, buying stuff to fix stuff was not necessarily in my vision of being a homeowner in San Francisco. The next thing that I've had a big problem with is insurability issues in San Francisco and in California in general. When I purchased this condo, there was one insurer, which surprised me, but it doesn't surprise me seeing the overall temperature of the insurance industry in California. Many insurers are just pulling out. When I was looking at maps of San Francisco of where I wanted to buy, a lot of people don't realize this about San Francisco, but a large part of the city is actually landfill. The city was basically built up out of the bay in the 18th and 19th century, and a lot of the flat areas of San Francisco are artificial. The problem with that is during an earthquake, basically it becomes a liquefaction zone and it behaves like jello. And so when I started looking in San Francisco, I did not want to buy in a liquefaction zone. And pro tip for people who are looking in San Francisco, any neighborhood that ends in a hill or height probably is natural and probably is bedrock and is not a liquefaction zone. So we have neighborhoods like Diamond Heights, Bernal Heights, Potrero Hill, Russian Hill, Pacific Heights. those are all natural bedrock, and you can buy into those neighborhoods, and the building was built on bedrock. But the neighborhoods with hills and heights on them typically are pretty darn expensive, even more expensive for San Francisco. It really limits where you can buy real estate, but I did manage to buy on a building that is built on bedrock. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it didn't really matter. It didn't make insurance much more affordable. I was able to get an earthquake policy, but it's staggeringly expensive. It doesn't matter whether you're in a liquefaction zone in San Francisco or not. Insurability is going to be a huge problem. And it's this constant specter of being dropped by the one insurer that will insure this condo. And once you are dropped, your condo is basically unsellable because no bank will put a mortgage on an uninsurable property. If I had really thought more about insurability in California, maybe I would not have purchased. I made the best decision I could with the information I have available and bought on rock in a non-liquefaction zone. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it really didn't matter. Insurers don't care as much as I thought they would care about that. It's other factors that are really driving up the price of insurance here in California. The third problem I have is that I just have itchy feet. When I lived in apartments, I moved every maybe 3 to 4 years. And I that cadence. I've lived all over the Bay Area, including in San Francisco. I have lived in San Francisco before, but I also have lived in Oakland pretty extensively. And I just like changing buildings every 4 years. I've always chosen like very nice luxury buildings with 24-hour front desk presence, concierge, luxury apartments, sweeping views, things like that. And something else I realized is that I could rent a whole heck of a lot more than I could buy. When I looked at equivalent condos to what I was renting, it was several magnitudes of order outside of my purchasing power. I couldn't purchase what I could rent. I just loved the newer buildings and the amenities and this and that. I couldn't afford to buy a condo in a building with all these great amenities and glossiness and pools and rock climbing walls and sound studios and all these weird things that you get in like these luxury buildings. And I noticed 2 years into this condo that I just have itchy feet. It's okay, where am I gonna move next? What building am I gonna move? And this, oh, I can't move. I am an owner. People are like, oh, why don't you rent out the condo and you can move? You do not want to be a landlord in San Francisco. We have some of the tightest tenant or the strongest tenant laws in the nation. That's one thing I was absolutely adamant about in buying this condo is that I never want to get in a situation of being a landlord in San Francisco, and it will always be owner occupied. So you have to really ask yourself, if you have itchy feet and you're just in a period of your life where you have to move a lot for work or you just enjoy moving a lot, buying a home probably isn't the right decision. You know what? I'm going to put some shoes on these itchy feet. I'm in this mortgage and I'm in it for now. So I will not be moving. But the urge and the freedom definitely was there and definitely feels great. There are periods in my career where I was abroad and I was able to have a lease end on an apartment, just put everything in storage, go abroad, work internationally for a couple of months, and then come back to the US and rent another place. I realized I can't really do that now. I have a mortgage to carry now, and I can't just clear everything out, put it in storage, and go. And so I do miss some of the freedom that I had as a renter. I already mentioned this. Basically, I could buy less than I could rent. Anybody who is buying in San Francisco, unless you are fabulously wealthy, there will always be some compromise in the home that you purchase. It may not be in the neighborhood that you initially envisioned. It may not have as many bedrooms or bathrooms as you wanted. It may not have been in the building that you wanted. It may not have all the amenities you want unless you are fantastically wealthy, like you have tens of millions of dollars and you can basically go out and just buy what you want. Everyone lives in a state of compromise in San Francisco, and I am no exception. There are things I love about my condo, and then there are things that I don't like about my condo. And guess what? I didn't have enough money to go out and buy the condo of my dreams. And I was okay with that on some level because when you live in a city like San Francisco or Manhattan or LA, Unless you were coming in, you were fabulously wealthy, you understand that there are parts of your accommodations that you're going to have to compromise on. And that was certainly true of me as well. Another thing, I bought in October 2023. My interest rate is 6 1/3. You marry the property and you date the rate. Of course, every real estate agent, every mortgage broker tells you that. And what I was anticipating at that point in time is that interest rates were going to come down throughout 2024, certainly by 2025. I don't think I was going to be able to get like a 2.7% interest rate or anything like that. But as long as I could get my mortgage below 4%, I would save a significant amount of money. I would be saving several $100s every month. And so I was just planning to refinance and I thought it was going to be easy peasy. Things have certainly gone in different directions and interest rates have not come down. And I'm still at 6 1/3. And I actually feel very lucky to be 6 1/3 because I have close friends who closed on property within 2 weeks of me closing. Like literally, I have a friend who closed within 2 weeks of when I closed, and her interest rate is over 7% because interest rates were just rising so rapidly at the time that I closed on this unit that from day to day, you could have a different interest rate. And I felt blessed to have 6 1/3, even though it's not that great. But when I started looking at properties, and I started looking at properties probably 4 months before I actually found the property closed and moved in, I was quoted an interest rate of 4.75. I just got it with a very high interest rate. I thought I was going to be able to refinance. It hasn't happened yet, and realistically, it may not happen for a while. So I'm stuck with a pretty crappy interest rate right now. So condo living versus single family home. I have a condominium. I wanted a condominium. I didn't want the upkeep with a single family home. And I to buy a single family home in the neighborhood where I am in is tens of millions of dollars. There's just no way I was going to be able to buy a single family home. I like living in a condo. I love my neighbors. I have great neighbors. I don't think I would ever buy a condominium again. The HOA fees are insane and they have increased 10% since I've moved into this building. I've also learned that leaks and water intrusion is a big issue. Your neighbor leaves his dishwasher running and it overflows, and suddenly it's in your apartment, or his washer gives out and suddenly there's a leak in your apartment. I am on the HOA board and I'm astonished how many leaks occur that start off in one apartment and end up in someone else's apartment. And then it's a huge problem of fixing leaks and fixing the problem. I just also learned living in a condo, everything is a compromise because you're basically sharing four walls with other people. And not that I have an outrageous lifestyle or I want to do anything that would be disruptive to my neighbors, but I would like to have a little bit more freedom in my space where I'm not sharing adjacent walls with people and people are not sharing adjacent walls with me. My future plans for this, I'm here for now. I'm like 10 toes deep in this condo. And most of the errors that I listed were not financial errors, they were lifestyle errors. Like I said, I have a price in mind. I would love to sell this condo, and I'm knocking on wood right now that someday I will be able to sell this condo. It would allow me to reap a little bit of profit. But once you add in the property tax, maintenance, insurance, the profit margin is really narrow, and the amount of money I put down for down payment and the amount of money that I'm putting down every month, it's the mortgage. If I invested that in the S&P 500, I probably would be much far ahead if I had just invested in the S&P 500. But I was fixed and determined to have this experience of home ownership, and here I am. I do plan to buy again when I'm older, when I'm preparing to retire, because I do believe there is benefit in owning a home when you retire. But I probably moved a little bit too quickly, but in some respects, I'm having the experience that I sought and that I wanted, and I don't regret that. So there you have it from a financial advisor, my perspective on buying a home. Tell me what you think. Tell me what you like and tell me what you don't like. If you found this information useful, please share and please subscribe. Thanks.